The world of Pokémon is not only built around battles and journeys, but also around the countless items that trainers carry in their bags. Some of these are simple and practical, like potions or Pokeballs, while others are mysterious, ancient, or tied to deep legends. Items serve as the bridge between players and the Pokémon they care for. Among the very first items most trainers encounter are potions. These simple sprays are handed out at the beginning of nearly every game, teaching players that caring for their team is just as important as battling. Their origin is never explained, leaving fans to wonder what ingredients make them so effective. Some suggest they are made from natural herbs found across the regions, distilled into a healing mist that Pokemon instinctively respond to. Full restores and max potions expand on this idea, hinting at advanced technology that can completely mend injuries in a matter of seconds. Rare candy is another healing item, though in a different sense. Instead of restoring health, it instantly raises a Pokemon's level, something that defies the usual rules of training. Fans speculate that rare candy might be infused with condensed experience energy, explaining how a single sweet can create the progress of countless battles. Because it skips the natural process of growth, some believe Pokemon that eat too many may miss out on the bonds and discipline that come with training, giving rare candy a slightly uneasy reputation despite its convenience. Leftovers is one of the strangest healing items because of how it works in battle. While it's described as simple food scraps, it restores health continuously, suggesting that Pokemon are snacking mid-fight. The image of a massive Snorlax slowly regaining strength as it munches on leftovers has become iconic, but the mechanics also hint at the importance of nourishment in the Pokemon world. Unlike potions, which rely on human technology, leftovers are natural, showing that Pokemon sometimes heal themselves in ways we might overlook. The Lucky Egg, another item tied to healing and growth, is associated with Chansey and Blissey. These Pokemon are known for caring for others, and their eggs are said to promote happiness and wellness. Trainers who hold a lucky egg gain more experience, which feels symbolic. The nurturing gift of a Chansey translates into growth and learning. This item connects mechanics with lore in a gentle way, reminding players that the Pokemon world always ties emotion and kindness back into gameplay. Together, these healing items reflect how the Pokemon series balances mechanics with deeper meaning. Potions teach the basics of care, rare candy tempts players with shortcuts, and items like leftovers and Lucky Egg blur the line between technology and nature. They may seem simple at first glance, but these items shape the way trainers think about responsibility and growth from the very start of their journey. Throughout the Pokemon world, there are objects that seem simple at first, yet contain power that feels almost magical. Evolutionary stones are among the most mysterious because they transform Pokemon instantly in ways that cannot be explained by ordinary growth. The Fire Stone, Water Stone, Thunder Stone, and Leaf Stone have been part of the series since the very beginning, and their influence has carried across every generation. When Eevee evolves into Vaporeon with the Water Stone or into Jolteon with the Thunder Stone, it is not just a change in strength, but a complete transformation of its biology. The way a single object can cause such a shift suggests that these stones contain concentrated energy drawn from the natural world. Fans often wonder if they are rare minerals infused with elemental forces, or if they are crafted artifacts passed down from ancient civilizations who understood their potential. The Moonstone is perhaps the most enchanting of them all. Used to evolve Clefairy, Nidorino, and Nidorina, it has been connected to cosmic power since the earliest games. Its very name suggests a link to the skies above, and many players imagine that moonstones are fragments of meteorites. This connects to real-world myths about stones falling from the heavens, granting magic to those who find them. The fact that Clefairy, a Pokemon associated with the moon, requires this stone reinforces the connection. The moonstone feels less like an object of science and more like a shard of mystery, one that reminds players that the Pokemon world is full of cosmic secrets. As generations continued, new stones appeared, each adding depth to the world. The Sunstone brings light and growth, turning gloom into blossom and Sunkern into Sunflora. This opposite relationship to the Moonstone reflects the eternal balance of day and night. The shiny stone, used for evolutions like Togekiss and Roserade, seems to capture brilliance itself, as though the sparkle of light has been condensed into a crystal. The Dawnstone represents beginnings, transforming Kirlia into Galad and Snorunt into Frostlass, symbolizing fresh starts and new paths. Each stone carries not only an elemental theme, but also an emotional or symbolic one, making them more than just gameplay mechanics. The role of stones is especially significant with Eevee, whose multiple evolutions are often explained through the influence of these rare objects. A Firestone turns it into Flareon, a Waterstone into Vaporeon, and a Thunderstone into Jolteon. Later generations expanded this even further, showing that Eevee's unstable genetic code responds directly to the environment and items around it. This has led fans to speculate that evolutionary stones are not merely magical objects, but catalysts that unlock potential lying dormant within certain species. Eevee's adaptability serves as the perfect example, making these stones feel essential to understanding how evolution works in the Pokemon world. Beyond gameplay, evolutionary stones carry cultural weight. In regions like Kanto and Johto, they are sold in department stores, suggesting that humans have learned how to find and trade them. In other places, such as Sinnoh, they are rare treasures buried in caves or found by mining. This suggests that stones are natural resources scattered across the world, discovered and cherished much like precious gems are in our own. Their scarcity often matches their importance, with only a few being available in each playthrough, creating the sense that players are wielding something truly special when they use one. What makes evolutionary stones so fascinating is how little explanation is ever given for them. Unlike potions or Pokeballs, which can be understood as technology, stones feel ancient, primal, and beyond human understanding. They suggest a world where Pokemon are tied to natural forces far greater than people. When a stone glows and causes an instant transformation, it feels like tapping into the heartbeat of the earth itself. Even though the games never reveal their origin, players continue to imagine where they come from, how they form, and what secrets they hold. Some fans believe that evolutionary stones may even be fragments of the same cosmic energy that created legendaries like Arceus, while others think they are gifts from the environment, proof that the land and sky nurture Pokemon in hidden ways. Using an evolutionary stone is always a moment of choice. Unlike natural leveling, which comes with time, stones are permanent. Once used, the Pokemon evolves and cannot return to its earlier form. This weight makes stones feel like sacred tools, not to be used lightly. Trainers often wait until the right moment, balancing moves they want their Pokemon to learn with the desire to evolve. That choice adds a layer of storytelling, making each use of a stone feel personal. It is not just about gaining strength, but about deciding the future of a companion, The mystery of evolutionary stones grows deeper with the newer additions like the Ice Stone and Dusk Stone. These items show that evolution can be tied to the extremes of temperature and the mysteries of twilight. The Dusk Stone, in particular, carries a haunting quality used to evolve ghostly or dark Pokémon, such as Murkrow into Honchkrow and Misdreavus into Mismagius. These evolutions feel like they connect directly to folklore, suggesting that stones may be conduits for ancient myths. The Ice Stone, introduced later, expands the elemental range, allowing Pokemon like Alolan Vulpix to blossom into Ninetales. Every new stone continues the tradition of blending gameplay utility with deep symbolic meaning. When seen as a whole, evolutionary stones are not just collectibles, they are reminders that in the Pokemon universe, nature and mystery intertwine. They reflect cosmic forces, elemental energy, and emotional themes, all condensed into crystals that reshape life itself. Whether in the hands of a trainer or hidden deep in caves, they remain among the most enchanting items in the series, proof that the Pokemon world is built on wonders that cannot always be explained. Fossils are some of the most fascinating items in the entire Pokemon series because they connect the present with an imagined prehistoric past. From the very first games, players could choose between the Dome fossil and the Helix fossil, each one carrying with it the promise of reviving a creature long extinct. The choice itself felt monumental, almost like a test of loyalty. Would you side with the Dome and claim Kabuto, or select the Helix and awaken Omanite? In truth, it was a simple branching decision, but the atmosphere of the laboratory, where these fossils could be revived, made it feel like bringing back lost history. The fact that such items could restore extinct Pokemon made players imagine the vastness of a world full of creatures that had lived and died long before the ones encountered in the wild. The Old Amber stands apart as one of the earliest and most exciting fossil-related items. Instead of being part of the simple Dome or Helix decision, it offered the chance to revive Aerodactyl, a dragon-like predator from ages past. Finding the Old Amber felt different from the others because it was hidden in a secret room, requiring players to explore and discover. Aerodactyl's menacing appearance only reinforced the feeling that it was something ancient and dangerous, a reminder that prehistoric Pokemon were not always docile. This item showed that fossils were not just curiosities, but gateways to species that had shaped the history of the Pokemon world. As generations expanded, new fossils appeared, each tied to different environments and time periods. In Hoenn, the root fossil and the claw fossil introduced players to Lileep and Anorith, Pokemon that reflected the diversity of prehistoric life. The root fossil led to a plant-like creature that had adapted to deep-sea environments, while the claw fossil became an ancient arthropod predator. These additions made it clear that fossils were not simply limited to dinosaur-like designs, but could represent a wide range of organisms, echoing real-world paleontology. By including them, the games expanded the idea that Pokemon had a deep evolutionary history stretching back into eras far older than most players imagined. In Sinnoh, the Skull fossil and Armor fossil continued this trend, reviving Cranidos and Shieldon. These two Pokemon mirrored each other as offense and defense, with Cranidos representing sheer physical strength and Shieldon embodying resilience. Their fossils even carried symbolic names, with the skull emphasizing aggression and the armor suggesting protection. Reviving them gave players a sense of holding not just Pokemon, but living symbols of survival strategies from a time when life was harsher and more primal. Their presence in the game added to the immersion, reminding trainers that the Pokemon world had eras of fierce competition and survival long before modern times. Unova took the fossil concept further with the cover fossil and plume fossil, which led to Tirtuga and Archon. These two showed even more creativity, with one being a turtle-like creature that evoked the ancient oceans, and the other a feathered creature that hinted at the earliest stages of flight. Archon in particular stood out because its lore described it as the ancestor of all bird Pokemon, tying fossils directly into the evolutionary chain that connects past and present. Items like the plume fossil were no longer just collectible trinkets, but pieces of world building that reshaped how players thought about the origins of familiar species. Kalos introduced the jaw fossil and the sail fossil, reviving Tyrunt and Amara. These Pokemon carried a sense of grandeur, with Tyrunt evoking the king of dinosaurs and Amara channeling the serenity of prehistoric ice. Their items reflected the duality of destruction and beauty, as one fossil represented raw power and the other gentle survival. This showed that even among ancient species, there was diversity not just in appearance, but in temperament and role within their environments. The items themselves were designed to feel regal and precious, matching the sense of history that they represented. Perhaps the strangest use of fossils comes from Galar, where they were combined in bizarre ways to create hybrid Pokemon such as Dracozolt, Arctozolt, Dracovish, and Arctovish. The items themselves are mismatched halves, intentionally designed to produce awkward and unnatural results. This was based on real-world history, where paleontologists once reconstructed fossils incorrectly, producing chimeric monsters that never truly existed. By including these fossil items, the games reminded players that the process of reviving ancient creatures is not always perfect, and sometimes mistakes or misunderstandings shape the way history is remembered. These strange combinations felt unsettling, almost like a parody of the fossil concept, but they also added a layer of depth by acknowledging real scientific history. Fossil items are more than gameplay collectibles. They carry with them the weight of lost eras and forgotten stories. When revived in laboratories, they blur the line between technology and nature, suggesting that humans in the Pokemon world possess powers akin to gods, able to restore life from stone. This raises questions that the games never answer. Do revived fossils live as naturally as any other Pokemon, or are they incomplete shadows of what once existed? Items like the Dome fossil, Helix fossil, and all their successors invite players to reflect on the enormity of time and the mysteries that still lie buried beneath the earth. Not all items are meant to be consumed or used once. Some are designed to be held, quietly shaping the course of battles in subtle but powerful ways. These battle-focused held items have become an important part of competitive play, but their origins also carry meaning within the world of Pokemon itself. Leftovers is one of the earliest and most beloved of these items, offering steady recovery during battles. It may seem simple, described only as food scraps, but its impact on strategy is immense. Trainers began to see how an item could transform the role of a Pokemon, turning a defensive wall like Snorlax into a seemingly unbreakable tank. What makes leftovers fascinating is that it is described as ordinary food, something every household might have, yet in battle, it becomes one of the most reliable survival tools ever designed. The Choice Band, Choice Scarf, and Choice Specs are among the most iconic items of modern Pokemon. They each lock a Pokemon into one move, but dramatically increase its power, speed, or special attack. The concept of willingly limiting yourself for greater strength has intrigued players since their introduction. In a sense, they reflect the idea of commitment that sometimes focusing on one action with all your energy can outweigh flexibility. Within the lore of the world, these items feel like equipment crafted by trainers who value discipline and specialization. The fact that they have become staples of competitive battles shows how a single idea, one move taken to its fullest potential, can shape entire strategies. Focus Sash is another item that feels both simple and profound. It allows a Pokémon that would be knocked out in one hit to survive with a single point of health. This small safety net has changed the outcome of countless battles, giving fragile but dangerous Pokémon a chance to retaliate. The item's description calls it a sash that ensures survival, but players often interpret it symbolically, a last breath of determination that keeps a Pokémon standing even when all seems lost. In this way, the Focus Sash has become a favorite of those who appreciate underdogs, creatures that refuse to fall even in the face of overwhelming force. Assault Vest is one of the more curious items because of its unique restriction. It boosts a Pokemon's special defense, but prevents the use of status moves, allowing only direct attacks. This creates an unusual balance, reflecting the concept of heavy armor that protects its wearer but limits their options. Within the lore of items, the Assault Vest seems to represent the idea of a defensive warrior who chooses brute force and endurance over strategy. It shows how items can embody philosophies, turning abstract ideas like defense at a cost into practical mechanics. Another fascinating item is the Eviolite, which increases the defenses of Pokémon that are not fully evolved. This simple mechanic transformed creatures that were once considered weak into formidable battlers. Suddenly, Pokémon like Chansey or Dusclops, which normally would be overshadowed by their evolutions, gained a new lease on life. From a storytelling perspective, the Eviolite represents untapped potential and the idea that even those who have not reached their final form can still stand strong. It also raises intriguing questions about how evolution works in the Pokémon world. Does holding an Eviolite mean that the Pokémon channels energy meant for its future form into the present, strengthening itself by holding back its evolution? Life Orb is another item with lore that goes beyond its simple description. It boosts power at the cost of the user's health, embodying the idea of sacrificing well-being for greater strength. This trade-off is a familiar theme in mythology, where warriors or sorcerers give up parts of themselves for power. The Life Orb feels like one of those legendary relics, dangerous yet tempting, offering victory at a price. Many trainers see it as one of the riskiest, yet most rewarding items to use, reflecting the eternal struggle between ambition and self-preservation. Rocky Helmet is another item that adds both flavor and strategy. When a Pokémon is struck with a physical attack, the opponent takes damage in return. This makes Rocky Helmet a tool for turning defense into offense, punishing reckless aggression. Its design is never elaborated on, but the concept itself is striking. It is essentially armor designed to hurt anyone who dares to touch it, symbolizing how even passive resistance can carry hidden dangers. The concept of berries overlaps with held items in important ways. Oran and citrus berries, for example, restore health mid-battle, while lum berries heal status conditions. These items feel more natural compared to mechanical tools, suggesting that Pokémon instinctively know how to use them. Watching a creature eat a berry at the perfect moment to recover reinforces the sense that items are not always external tools crafted by humans. Sometimes they are part of nature itself. In this sense, berries are living proof that the Pokemon world provides for itself, offering ways to endure battles without relying on artificial sprays or machines. Some held items are tied to specific species, adding to their lore. The Thick Club doubles the power of Cubone and Marowak, connecting directly to their imagery of wielding bones as weapons. This suggests that the club is not just a random bone, but a treasured relic with hidden energy. Soul Dew, exclusive to Latias and Latios, carries emotional weight, described as holding the soul of these legendary Pokemon. In battle, it boosts their powers, but symbolically, it represents the bond and essence of the creatures themselves. Items like these blur the line between gameplay and mythology, suggesting that certain objects hold the very essence of Pokemon. Together, these held items paint a picture of a world where objects are more than just tools. They embody philosophies like sacrifice, determination, and focus. They transform strategies, elevate forgotten Pokemon, and give depth to the mechanics of battle. More than that, they show how even the smallest item can tell a story. Whether it is a sash that protects the faint-hearted, a relic that demands sacrifice, or a berry that offers natural healing, each item carries meaning that resonates beyond the battlefield. Berries are among the most charming and versatile items in the Pokemon world. At first glance, they appear to be simple fruits that grow in the wild, yet their properties reveal a depth that connects them to both nature and strategy. In the earliest games, Oran and citrus berries showed players that Pokemon could heal themselves by eating something found naturally in the world, unlike potions, which required human technology. The idea of a creature instinctively pulling a berry from its pouch in the middle of battle adds a layer of realism and warmth to the series. It suggests that Pokemon have their own relationship with the environment, one that trainers are simply learning to support. Lumberry is one of the most fascinating examples, capable of curing almost any status condition. This single fruit embodies the concept of renewal, a natural antidote to poison, paralysis, sleep, and more. It is as if the Lumberry represents the perfect balance of nature, a symbol of healing that surpasses even medicine crafted by humans. Many players remember the first time their Pokemon held a Lumberry and recovered from a critical status effect at just the right moment, creating stories of resilience and survival tied to a simple fruit. As the generations expanded, berries became more diverse, each with its own flavor, effects, and lore. Some restore health at specific thresholds, like the Figgy or Wiki berries, which heal when a Pokemon's health falls below half. Others are designed for competitive use, such as the Oka or Rindo berries, which reduce the damage from super effective moves. These berries show how nature itself has adapted to protect Pokemon, offering a defensive answer to nearly every type of attack. It is as though the world of Pokemon is alive with hidden safeguards, quietly ensuring balance between predator and prey. Perhaps the most interesting berries are those tied to effort values, such as the Tomato, Kelpsie, and Pomeg berries, which reduce specific stats while increasing friendship. These items reflect a hidden philosophy that sometimes growth comes not from piling on more, but from letting go. By lowering one quality and raising bonds, these berries embody the idea of balance and harmony. They remind trainers that success is not just about numbers and strength, but about the bond shared between human and Pokemon. The fact that these berries can reshape a creature's training path makes them among the most symbolic of all. In the Hoenn region, berries took on a greater role by becoming part of cultivation. Trainers could plant seeds and watch as berries grew over time, tending to them like farmers. This feature emphasized the connection between people and the land, making berries feel like living parts of the world rather than static items. Each tree had a life cycle, from sprout to flowering plant to a fruit bearing tree, reminding players of the natural rhythms of growth. Some berries even carried regional flavor, like the nanab, pinap, and webhair, which were unique to Hoenn and added richness to the lore. Certain berries are tied directly to legendary Pokémon and special events. The Enigma berry, for example, was distributed only during specific events and carried mysterious properties. Its very existence suggests a berry beyond ordinary nature, perhaps tied to the powers of rare creatures. Other rare berries, such as the lychee, ganlon, and salak, are found only under unusual circumstances, making them symbols of rarity and patience. For players who obtained them, these berries felt like treasures, not just because of their effects, but because of the effort required to find them. The anime also elevated berries, showing how they could be used in daily life. Episodes often depicted Pokémon foraging for berries or trainers, using them to cook meals, making them feel like staples of the world rather than abstract items. Seeing Pikachu nibble on berries in the wild reinforced their role as natural food, while scenes of trainers preparing them as medicine or treats emphasized their cultural importance. The anime treated berries as part of the everyday bond between people and Pokemon, a bridge that tied the extraordinary to the ordinary. Even the names and designs of berries carry meaning. Many are based on real fruits, but twisted into fantastical forms, blending familiarity with imagination. Their colors and shapes make them instantly memorable, and their associations with different effects add layers of personality. A bright yellow citrus berry suggests refreshing energy, while the deep red of a lychee berry hints at hidden power. These designs show how something as simple as fruit can embody entire philosophies of growth, care, and survival. Berries are also unique because they represent the most natural form of items in the Pokemon world. They are not crafted in factories, sold in department stores, or discovered in ruins. They grow from the ground, sprout from trees, and can be shared freely between Pokemon and trainers alike. This gives them a warmth that no other item has. They embody the idea that the world itself provides what its creatures need, offering gifts that nurture, heal, and protect without expectation. When seen as a whole, berries may seem like small details compared to legendary artifacts or powerful stones, but they embody the heart of the Pokemon world. They remind us that life is sustained not just by power and battles, but by simple, everyday acts of nourishment and care. In the quiet moments of a journey, when a Pokemon eats a berry to keep going, the message is clear. Survival is not always about strength, but about the bonds we nurture and the gifts we accept from the natural world. Key items are some of the most fascinating parts of the Pokemon series because they are not consumed, sold, or used up like ordinary items. Instead, they stay in the trainer's bag permanently, shaping the journey in ways that are often subtle but unforgettable. From maps to bicycles, these tools define how trainers move through their adventure, often acting as symbols of progress. Each one carries not only practical use, but also emotional meaning, marking milestones in a journey where discovery and growth are constant companions. One of the earliest and most iconic key items is the town map. In the very first games, it was a gift from a rival's family, presented as a tool to guide the player through the unknown. While simple in function, It symbolized orientation and guidance. For many players, opening the map and seeing the layout of the region gave a sense of scale to the journey ahead. It is a reminder that adventure begins not only with Pokemon battles, but with understanding the land itself. The bicycle is another unforgettable item. From Kanto to Galar, the bicycle has been a constant companion, speeding up travel and offering freedom of movement. Its role goes beyond convenience. In regions like Hoenn, where the Mach bike and Acrobike introduced new mechanics, it became a puzzle-solving tool as well as transportation. The price tag in early games, set at 1 million Poké-Dollars, ensured it could never be bought directly, making it more of a reward than a purchase. Receiving it always felt like a rite of passage, a moment when the player was truly recognized as a traveling trainer. Fishing rods are another staple among key items. The Old Rod, Good Rod, and Super Rod introduced players to the wonders of water Pokemon in a way that felt natural and immersive. Each rod was an invitation to patience, rewarding persistence with discoveries ranging from simple Magikarp to powerful sea creatures. Fishing rods highlighted the connection between humans and water, reinforcing the idea that adventure was not confined to land, but stretched into rivers, lakes, and seas. The fact that these rods improved over time mirrored the trainer's growth, each upgrade unlocking a wider world of possibilities. The item finder, later evolved into the dowsing machine, was one of the first tools that encouraged players to look more closely at their surroundings. Hidden items scattered across the world rewarded curiosity, and the item finder made exploration feel purposeful. Later versions that displayed invisible items on the screen added layers of immersion, making the world feel alive with secrets waiting to be uncovered. This tool symbolized the idea that treasures exist everywhere if you know where to look. Another item worth noting is the Poké Flute. Its role was simple, waking up sleeping Pokémon like Snorlax, but its impact was unforgettable. The act of using music to move an otherwise immovable obstacle felt like a magical solution, one that tied gameplay to creativity and culture. The Poké Flute also reinforced the idea that items in the Pokémon world were not just machines or tools, but could embody art and emotion. A melody could be as powerful as any piece of technology. The exp share has perhaps the most complicated history of all key items. In its early forms, it was an item given to a single Pokémon, sharing experience points across the team in small amounts. Over time, it evolved into a universal tool that distributed growth to the entire party automatically. This change sparked debate among players, with some embracing the convenience and others missing the challenge of training each Pokémon individually. Regardless of preference, the X share represents the changing philosophy of the games, a shift toward accessibility, efficiency, and making sure every companion grows together. One of the more mysterious key items is the V's Seeker, which allowed trainers to rematch opponents. This small device added a new layer of realism, suggesting that other trainers also continued to train and seek battles after their first encounters. It reminded players that the Pokémon world is alive, with people constantly striving for improvement. The V's Seeker embodied the idea of persistence, a theme that resonates throughout the series. The evolution of key items across regions also reflects the uniqueness of each generation. In Johto, the radio and phone functions of the Pokégear connected players to trainers and broadcasts across the region, blending modern technology with adventure. In Sinnoh, the Pokétch expanded on this idea with apps that felt playful yet functional. Later, The Rotom Dex, combining Rotom with a Pokédex, gave the item itself a personality, blurring the line between tool and companion. Each region's approach to key items mirrors the culture and personality of that world, making them feel distinctive and alive. Event-exclusive key items have their own unique place in history. Items like the Old Sea Map, Azure Flute, and Member Card were distributed during rare promotions, unlocking encounters with mythical Pokémon like Deoxys, Arceus, and Darkrai. For many players, these items were unreachable, making them symbols of mystery and longing. Even today, they carry an aura of exclusivity, reminding fans of events they may have missed but still dream about. They represent the intersection of gameplay and community, where items became gateways to legends shared across the world. Together, key items show that Pokémon is not just about creatures and battles, but about the tools that guide, support, and enrich the journey. They are the symbols of exploration, the markers of progress, and the keys to unlocking deeper parts of the world. From simple maps to legendary flutes, these items remind us that the heart of Pokémon lies not only in combat, but in adventure itself, where every tool has a story, and every story invites us to keep moving forward. Among the most iconic items in the Pokémon series are the technical machines and hidden machines, better known as TMs and HMs. They were introduced in the earliest games as discs that could teach Pokémon new moves, expanding their capabilities far beyond what they learned naturally. The image of sliding a small futuristic disc into a machine and instantly teaching a creature a new skill is one of the most distinctive aspects of the franchise. For many players, finding a TM felt like uncovering treasure because it often granted access to powerful or rare moves not available through leveling alone. In the first generations, TMs were single-use items. Once a disc was applied, it vanished, making each choice permanent. This gave them a weight that few other items carried. Players often saved TMs for the right moment, hesitating to use them until they were certain about which Pokémon should learn a move. This sense of finality added to the emotional bond between trainer and Pokémon, as teaching a move with a TM felt like a significant decision. It was not just about adding power, it was about shaping a companion's future. Hidden machines, on the other hand, served a dual purpose. Not only did they teach moves like Surf, Fly, and Cut, but they also acted as keys to exploration, unlocking areas otherwise inaccessible. Surf allowed travel across vast oceans, Fly offered quick passage between towns, and Strength let trainers push heavy boulders. These abilities transformed the way players moved through regions, tying progress directly to the bond between trainer and Pokémon. HMs symbolized teamwork, as trainers relied on their companions not only for battles, but also for exploration. Over time, the system of TMs and HMs evolved. By the time of the 5th generation, TMs became reusable, eliminating the anxiety of one-time use. This change reflected a shift in design philosophy. Instead of forcing players to choose carefully, the games now encouraged experimentation. With infinite uses, TMs became tools of creativity, allowing trainers to test different strategies freely. HMs, however, continued to be controversial. While they served as markers of progress, they often burdened players with the need to carry Pokémon specifically for field moves. This gave rise to the term HM slave, describing companions who were kept solely to cut trees, surf rivers, or climb waterfalls. The eventual removal of HMs in later generations marked the end of an era. Games like Sun and Moon replaced them with ride Pokémon, letting players summon Tauros to smash rocks, or Charizard to take to the skies. While convenient, this change carried nostalgia for earlier mechanics. For many fans, HMs were more than inconveniences. They were symbols of partnership, moments when the journey and the team felt inseparably linked. Teaching surf to a trusted water companion was more than a requirement. It was a shared experience that reflected the journey itself. TMs also grew more diverse across generations, expanding from a limited selection of basic moves to hundreds of possibilities. Some discs granted legendary techniques like Hyper Beam, while others offered defensive strategies such as Protect or Substitute. The variety of TMs showcased the depth of Pokemon's move system, turning items into opportunities for experimentation. By including both powerful and mundane moves, the developers emphasized that not every discovery is earth-shattering, but every choice matters in shaping a team. One of the most memorable aspects of TMs and HMs is their connection to exploration and secrets. In many games, hidden caves or remote areas contained rare discs, rewarding players who searched every corner of the map. Discovering a powerful TM tucked away in a difficult-to-reach area felt like uncovering a hidden story. These items encouraged curiosity and persistence, reminding players that the world was full of surprises for those willing to look. The way TMs and HMs are presented also reflects the broader themes of the Pokémon world. They suggest a society where knowledge is stored and shared through technology, where the abilities of creatures can be expanded through human invention. At the same time, the permanence of HMs and the scarcity of TMs in the early games mirrored the theme of careful decision-making. Every choice carried weight, echoing the reality of a journey where growth comes with responsibility. Even after their removal, the legacy of TMs and HMs remains central to the series. Players still remember the tension of deciding whether to use a precious TM or hold on to it for later. They recall the satisfaction of teaching surf to a trusted companion, knowing it would open new oceans to explore. These items symbolize the blending of mechanics and storytelling, where technology, exploration, and personal choice come together. In the end, TMs and HMs are more than just discs or field tools. They represent the intersection of freedom and responsibility, creativity and tradition. They remind us that items are not only about what they do mechanically, but about how they make us feel as trainers. Whether single-use treasures or infinite tools of experimentation, they remain among the most iconic items in Pokémon history, symbols of the way technology, adventure, and companionship intertwine. Among the many items that trainers carry, some feel less practical and more like curiosities. These are the pieces of the Pokémon world that often get overlooked, yet they add charm and personality to the journey. Mail is one of the earliest examples, and while its role in battles or exploration was minimal, it carried symbolic importance. In the second generation, trainers could attach letters to Pokémon and trade them with friends. Each piece of mail had its own design, often decorated with colorful patterns or Pokémon themes. While the mechanics were simple, the emotional value was immense. A message written on mail was a reminder that Pokémon is not just about battling or collecting, but about connection, sharing, and communication. Some players remember the sheer variety of mail introduced in later games. From flowery patterns to bold stripes, every design made sending a message feel personal. It became a way for friends to send notes or tokens, even if the words were limited by in-game constraints. Over time, the feature faded, but mail still stands out as one of the earliest attempts to make trading more than just a mechanical exchange. It transformed a transaction into a shared moment, leaving behind a sense of intimacy between trainers. Decoration items in earlier generations also carried similar charm. In Hoenn and Sinnoh, trainers could collect dolls, cushions, and other decorations for their secret bases. These items had no direct effect on battles, but they allowed creativity to flourish. Designing a base with personal touches turned the adventure into something more than a linear journey. It became a story of self expression. These small details showed that the Pokemon world was not only about competing, but also about finding joy in personalization. There were also items that existed purely to reflect quirks of the world. The Shoal Salt and Shoal Shell from Hoenn are examples of collectibles tied to specific locations. Found in Shoal Cave, they could be combined into a Shell Bell, an item that restored health in battle when a Pokemon dealt damage. The process of gathering them was slow and tied to the tides, which changed depending on the time of day. This mechanic subtly connected players to the natural rhythm of the game's world, reinforcing the theme that items are not just static, but linked to living systems. Some odd items served as symbols of humor. The Big Nugget, Big Mushroom, and Pearl String had no real purpose beyond being sold for money, but their descriptions often hinted at curiosity. Why did wild Pokemon sometimes hold these treasures? Did they find them, or were they tied to their lifestyles in unseen ways? Items like the tiny mushroom, often found on Paras, suggested a strange ecosystem where Pokemon and their environments interacted in ways players could only guess at. These small, quirky details made the world feel richer and more alive. Mail and other miscellaneous items also highlight how Pokemon has always balanced seriousness with lightheartedness. While powerful relics like orbs or flutes connect to mythology, there are also items like the Rage Candy Bar, Lava Cookie, and Old Gateau. These treats heal status conditions, but also reflect the cultures of their respective regions. Each one ties directly to local identity, reminding players that the Pokemon world is built on communities, traditions, and small comforts. The Rage Candy Bar from Johto, for example, is not just medicine, but also a souvenir, showing how regional items carry both gameplay and cultural significance. One of the strangest miscellaneous items in the series is the Strange Souvenir, introduced in Kalos. Its design resembles the guardian deities of Alola, even though the item appears in a region where those deities had not yet been formally introduced. This curious connection sparked years of speculation, with fans wondering if it was a deliberate hint of the next generation. In this way, the Strange Souvenir became more than just an odd trinket. It became a bridge between regions, proof that the world of Pokemon is interconnected in subtle ways. Other small items carry more somber tones. The Cleanse Tag, meant to ward off wild encounters, is described as a spiritual charm. Its connection to ghost Pokemon and haunted areas makes it feel less like an ordinary accessory and more like an artifact of folklore. It suggests that humans in the Pokemon world rely on superstitions and traditions, not just science and technology, to protect themselves. The existence of items like this blurs the line between myth and mechanics, reminding players that the world is full of unseen forces. The variety of miscellaneous items can sometimes feel overwhelming, yet that is part of their charm. Each one adds a layer of depth to the Pokemon universe, whether through humor, culture, or mystery. Together, they remind us that the adventure is not only about grand battles and legendary discoveries, but also about the small details that make the world feel lived in. From the joy of sending mail to a friend to the quiet satisfaction of decorating a base, or the curiosity sparked by a strange souvenir, these items enrich the journey in ways that cannot always be measured. In the end, these oddities are part of what makes the series timeless. They are reminders that not everything has to serve a practical purpose. Sometimes, items exist simply to make the world feel warmer, stranger, or more human. In a universe filled with legends and epic battles, it is these little details that often linger in memory, softening the edges of the adventure with charm and wonder. Some items stand apart from ordinary tools and consumables because they carry the weight of myth. These are the objects tied directly to legendary Pokémon, often described as relics of great power or remnants of ancient stories. They do not just boost stats in battle, they represent fragments of history, pieces of lore that connect players to the mysteries of the world. Holding one of these items feels less like carrying equipment and more like holding a part of legend. The Soul Dew is perhaps one of the most famous examples. Associated with Latias and Latios, it is said to contain the very soul of these creatures. When held, it enhances their power, reflecting a bond so deep it transcends the physical. In earlier generations, the Soul Dew was considered so powerful in competitive battles that it was banned, reinforcing its aura of being something beyond ordinary items. The description alone, that of a gem holding the essence of life, elevates it from a simple tool into a sacred artifact. Players who encountered it could not help but feel as though they had stumbled upon a fragment of a story much larger than themselves. The Griseous Orb carries a similar sense of reverence. Tied to Giratina, it enhances the ghostly dragon's abilities and allows it to transform into its origin form. Unlike most held items, this one alters the very appearance of the Pokémon, suggesting that it is more than a battle enhancer, it is a key to identity. The idea that a single object could restore a creature to its true form is deeply symbolic. It implies that some Pokémon cannot fully be themselves without the presence of the relics tied to their past. Dialga and Palkia each have their own items, the Adamant Orb and Lustrous Orb. These shimmering relics amplify their already godlike powers, but they also act as symbols of their dominion over time and space. The names alone, Adamant and Lustrous, evoke strength and brilliance, qualities fitting for beings who govern such vast concepts. Players who discovered these orbs in Sinnoh felt as though they had uncovered pieces of creation itself. The fact that they are hidden in the world rather than simply handed out reinforces the idea that these are treasures meant only for those who seek them with patience. The creator Pokémon is tied to an entire collection of items known as plates. Each plate represents an elemental type, and when held, they allow Arceus to change forms, reflecting the diversity of creation itself. Unlike most items, the plates carry inscriptions that speak of the bonds between humans and Pokémon, hinting at ancient stories lost to time. Collecting them feels almost ritualistic, as though piecing together fragments of scripture. They are not just battle tools, but chapters of a myth scattered across regions for players to uncover. Even smaller held items can carry lore. The light ball, tied to Pikachu, doubles its power, suggesting that it is not simply an accessory, but a manifestation of Pikachu's unique energy. The thick club, linked to Cubone and Marowak, serves as both a weapon and a relic, reinforcing their identity as Pokémon bound to bones and heritage. Items like these tie specific species to their histories, reminding players that objects in the Pokémon world often hold deep personal or cultural meaning. The red orb and blue orb are examples of items that blur the line between tool and legend. In Hoenn, they were said to control Groudon and Kyogre, two beings tied to the land and sea. The orbs became central to the mythology of the region, depicted not as simple trinkets, but as sacred artifacts entrusted to ancient peoples. Their power to awaken primal forces connects them directly to the theme of nature's balance, with the orbs symbolizing humanity's fragile relationship with forces far beyond control. Other items, such as the meteorite, which alters Deoxys's form, or the DNA splicers, which fuse Kyurem with Reshiram or Zekrom, show that items can represent not just relics of the past, but also tools of transformation. These objects tie into the idea that identity in the Pokémon world is flexible, shaped not only by nature, but by artifacts of power. The notion that a single item can alter biology or unlock hidden forms speaks to the blending of myth, science, and imagination that defines the series. Some of these held relics raise questions about how humans interact with Pokémon. Were they created by people who worship these creatures as gods, or do they originate from the Pokémon themselves? The inscriptions on the plates suggest reverence, while the orbs and splicers feel more like instruments of control. This duality mirrors the theme of the games. The relationship between people and Pokémon is one of cooperation, but also tension. Items like the Soul Dew, orbs, and plates embody that complexity, showing both devotion and the temptation of power. What makes these items most memorable is how they tie gameplay into storytelling. Using one in battle enhances a legendary's abilities, but outside of combat, they carry weight as cultural artifacts. They remind players that the Pokémon world is not just about numbers and stats, but about legends that linger across generations. Finding them feels like stepping into the role of an archaeologist, unearthing treasures that whisper of forgotten times. These lore-driven items are unlike any other because they make the player feel connected to something greater than the immediate journey. They are pieces of mythology, fragments of identity, and symbols of forces that cannot be fully understood. Whether glowing orbs tied to the balance of nature, plates inscribed with messages from the past, or relics said to contain souls, these items remind us that the Pokémon world is built on mystery. To hold one is to hold a story, and to carry it is to carry a legend. Some of the most unsettling items in the Pokémon world are the ones that seem to carry with them a sense of unease. These are not simply battle tools or everyday objects, but relics that feel steeped in superstition, folklore, and quiet fear. Unlike potions or evolutionary stones, they do not radiate wonder or practicality. Instead, they whisper of curses, spirits, and unseen dangers, as if the world of Pokémon has its own shadows where mysteries remain deliberately unexplained. The Cleanse Tag is one of the earliest examples of this kind of item. Its purpose in the games is to ward off wild Pokémon, reducing the chance of encounters, but its description paints it as a spiritual charm, an amulet carried to keep away vengeful spirits. The idea that ghost Pokémon could be dangerous enough for humans to need protective talismans adds a chilling dimension to the world. It suggests that not every person views Pokémon with affection or curiosity. Some may see them as threats that must be kept at a distance. The Cleanse Tag, in this way, connects directly to human superstition, feeling less like technology and more like folklore brought to life. The Spell Tag adds to this eerie category. While it boosts ghost-type attacks in battle, its very name evokes ancient rituals and curses. One can imagine it as a fragment of parchment or wood, inscribed with dark incantations. Unlike tools of science such as TMs or machines, The spell tag feels mystical, as though it belongs in a haunted shrine rather than a trainer's bag. The existence of such an item blurs the line between gameplay and myth, reinforcing the idea that humans in the Pokémon world sometimes rely on traditions that cannot be explained by science. The Reaper Cloth is another unsettling artifact. Used to evolve Dusclops into Dusknor, it is described as a cloth imbued with spiritual energy. Its very name suggests death, and the Pokémon it creates is one that guides lost souls to the afterlife. This raises questions about whether the Reaper Cloth is an object crafted by humans, or if it was discovered already infused with otherworldly power. In either case, it transforms an already eerie Pokémon into a being with even closer ties to death. Holding this item feels less like carrying equipment and more like bearing a burden, a reminder of mortality hidden within the mechanics of evolution. The Dusk Stone, though part of the broader category of evolutionary stones, belongs here because of its ominous aura. It evolves Pokémon such as Murkrow and Misdreavus into even darker forms, emphasizing themes of shadow and mystery. While the fire or water stones radiate elemental energy, the Dusk Stone seems to embody twilight, the boundary between light and darkness. Its glimmer is described as pitch black, an unsettling paradox that adds to its air of danger. Unlike stones that bring beauty or brilliance, the Dusk Stone suggests transformation into something more sinister, tying evolution to the darker aspects of nature. The strange souvenir stands apart as one of the oddest items ever introduced. Found in Kalos, its design resembles the guardian deities of Alola, even though players at that time had not yet been introduced to them. This small statue, carried by a traveling collector, raises countless questions. How did the item reach Kalos? Was it a deliberate hint from the developers, or a piece of lore suggesting that regions share connections through ancient travelers? The fact that the strange souvenir has no immediate use only deepens its mystery. It lingers in the bag like an unanswered question, a fragment of another culture that feels both out of place and quietly important. Another category of unsettling items includes those tied to spiritual possession. The Old Gateau, a dessert found in the haunted Old Chateau, is one of the strangest healing items in the series. While it functions like a full heal, its placement and association with a haunted location give it a sinister undertone. The idea of consuming food discovered in a ghost-filled mansion feels unsettling, as though the item carries traces of the spirits around it. Unlike other status healing snacks, such as lava cookies or rage candy bars, the Old Gateau is forever tied to a place of haunting. Even small details add to the unsettling nature of these items. The Everstone, for example, prevents evolution. While often used in breeding mechanics, its name and effect suggests something darker, the denial of growth and change. To carry it is to resist progress, keeping a Pokémon locked in its current state indefinitely. Some players see it as practical, but others view it as a symbol of stagnation, even a curse, depending on how it is framed. These darker items are important because they remind players that the Pokémon world is not one of endless sunshine and cheer. Beneath the surface, there are shadows, superstitions, and fears. Items like the Cleanse Tag and Spell Tag acknowledge that people do not always live comfortably alongside Pokémon, especially ghost types. Objects such as the Reaper Cloth and Duskstone suggest that evolution itself can be ominous, transforming creatures into beings tied to the afterlife. And oddities like the strange souvenir remind us that even beyond battles and mechanics, there are mysteries that may never be fully explained. What makes these items especially memorable is not their usefulness in gameplay, but the feelings they evoke. They add texture to the world, reminding players that it contains legends, fears, and traditions that go beyond the simple goals of training and battling. They suggest that people in this universe are still grappling with forces larger than themselves, using charms, relics, and symbols to try to understand what cannot be controlled. Together, these strange and dark items form a shadowy counterpart to the bright and practical ones. They are not about healing or convenience, but about mystery and unease. They represent the parts of the Pokémon world that remain hidden in twilight, reminding us that every universe, no matter how colorful, carries its share of secrets. Some items in the Pokémon series have always carried an air of mystery because of how rare they are. Unlike potions, berries, or evolutionary stones that can be found by any trainer on their journey, these objects were only distributed during limited events. For many players, they were completely out of reach, existing more as legends whispered about in magazines or on playgrounds than as tools ever seen in the game. These event-exclusive items are some of the most elusive in the entire series, and their very existence reminds us that Pokémon is not just about what is in the cartridge, but about the broader community and history around it. One of the most famous is the Azure Flute. In Sinnoh, this item was intended to summon Arceus at the top of Spear Pillar. Unlike a Master Ball or rare candy, the Azure Flute was never widely released. It appeared only in promotional distributions that many players missed entirely. Its design as a flute ties it to earlier artifacts like the Poké Flute, but the Azure Flute was different. It was meant to bridge the gap between mortals and a creator figure. The fact that so few players ever experienced this firsthand has given the item an almost mythical quality, like a secret doorway to the divine that was sealed before most could pass through it. The old C-map carries a similar mystique. Distributed only in Japan for Pokémon Emerald, it allowed access to Faraway Island, where Deoxys could be found. To many fans outside of Japan, this was an unreachable dream, something they could only read about but never experience. Holding the old C-map in-game was like holding a ticket to another world, one that most trainers would never see. It was not just an item, it was proof that the Pokémon world extended beyond the borders of a single game into events and connections that tied players together across the globe. Another item steeped in mystery is the member card. This simple object unlocked the ability to travel to New Moon Island, where Darkrai awaited. Its unassuming appearance as a hotel key belies its significance. Without it, the island is forever inaccessible, the encounter with Darkrai locked away. The member card exemplifies the way Pokémon sometimes hides its most exciting content behind rare keys, creating layers of exclusivity that turn ordinary items into legends. The lock capsule is perhaps one of the strangest event items. It was meant to be transferred from Heart Gold and Soul Silver into Black and White, unlocking a special TM, but the capsule itself was never widely distributed, and its very obscurity has made it memorable. The idea of an object designed to pass between generations of games, carrying secrets with it, adds to its sense of being something from outside the normal rules. To encounter the lock capsule is to glimpse the edges of the Pokémon world where not everything was completed, yet the intention itself still sparks curiosity. The Enigma Stone from Heart Gold and Soul Silver is another example of an item that feels more like lore than simple gameplay. When received, it allowed players to encounter either Latias or Latios, depending on the version. The very name, Enigma, reflects the aura of mystery. It is an item that is not simply functional, but carries meaning in its title, suggesting something puzzling, hidden, and special. The Eon ticket, available in both the third and sixth generations, worked in a similar way. It granted access to Southern Island, where trainers could catch Latios or Latios. What made the Eon ticket especially fascinating is how it was distributed. In Ruby and Sapphire, it could be shared between players via a feature called record mixing, which meant that only a handful of people needed the ticket originally, and it could then spread like a gift. This mechanic turned the Eon ticket into a communal item, something that traveled between players and carried stories with it. Event-exclusive items also served as teasers for new generations. The strange souvenir in Kalos hinted at Alola long before those games were revealed. It was not part of an event, but its design carried the same kind of secretive energy, planting seeds of excitement and speculation. Items like these remind us that the Pokémon world is not static but always expanding, with small clues scattered like breadcrumbs for attentive players. What makes these items particularly fascinating is that they blend reality and fiction. On one hand, they exist as data in a game, objects with programmed functions. On the other, they are tied to real-world events, promotions, and decisions made by developers. This dual existence gives them a unique aura. Players who obtain them feel as though they hold not just an in-game object, but a piece of history, something that cannot be replicated easily. For many fans, event items are not remembered for what they do, but for the stories surrounding them. The frustration of missing an event, the joy of finally obtaining a rare distribution, or the wonder of hearing about items that seemed out of reach, these emotions are what give them power. They remind us that Pokémon has always been about community, about sharing experiences, secrets, and discoveries. The Azure Flute, Old Sea Map, Member Card, and others are more than items. They are touchstones of memory, symbols of a time when the world felt larger and full of mysteries waiting to be unlocked. Not every item in the Pokémon world is meant to heal, evolve, or unlock hidden areas. Some exist almost entirely for their value, collected not for their function, but for the wealth they represent. These items, nuggets, pearls, mushrooms, and stardust, add another layer of realism to the series. They remind us that the Pokémon world has its own economy, treasures to be sold, and markets where rarity translates into prosperity. While they may not change the outcome of a battle, they enrich the sense that this is a living world where even trainers must sometimes think about money. The nugget is the most iconic of these. Introduced in the earliest games, it appears as a chunk of pure gold, valuable for its size and purity. In gameplay, it has only one use: to be sold for a high price. Yet its role has become legendary, especially because of the so-called Nugget Bridge in Kanto, where a trainer battle culminates in receiving one. For many players, this was their first encounter with an item whose value came not from use in battle, but from wealth itself. The nugget has since become a symbol of fortune, a reminder that treasure in the Pokémon world is not always mystical or functional, but can be as simple as shiny gold. Alongside gold, pearls and big pearls represent another form of wealth. These treasures are often found held by water Pokémon, such as Shelder or Clamperl, suggesting that they grow naturally within the shells of certain creatures. Their existence blurs the line between Pokémon biology and human economics, showing how the natural world supplies items that people deem valuable. While players may see them as currency within the world itself, they are reminders that even Pokémon carry treasures that connect directly to the economy. Selling a pearl feels like taking a piece of the ocean's beauty and trading it for opportunity. Mushrooms also play a curious role as value items. Tiny mushrooms and big mushrooms are often found on Paris or parasect, creatures whose bodies are already linked to fungi. This creates an eerie but fascinating connection, as though trainers are collecting pieces of the Pokémon themselves to sell. Beyond money, mushrooms also carry lore, with some being used for move tutors in certain games. This overlap between commerce and teaching suggests that items in the Pokemon world often serve multiple purposes, blending practicality with culture. Stardust and star pieces are other treasures that sparkle with intrigue. They are described as fragments of space dust, shimmering with beauty. Found in caves or on beaches, they feel like gifts from the cosmos itself, tiny pieces of the universe scattered across the world. Selling them brings money, but their descriptions hint at a larger story. Are they truly remnants of falling stars, or are they simply precious minerals? The ambiguity gives them a special charm. Holding a star piece feels less like carrying currency and more like holding a fragment of mystery. The big nugget, pearl string, and comet shard are larger or rarer variations of these value items, often sold for even higher prices. While their only gameplay purpose is financial, they add richness to the world by showing that treasure can take many forms. Each one carries a story, whether it is a giant chunk of gold, a strand of perfect pearls, or a shard of cosmic stone. They elevate the idea of wealth in the Pokemon universe beyond coins or bills, tying it to tangible objects with beauty and history. One of the most interesting aspects of these items is how they are often found in unexpected places. A nugget might be discovered deep in a cave, or stardust might be picked up on a quiet beach. These small discoveries remind players that treasure exists everywhere, not just in grand battles or legendary quests. They reward curiosity and exploration, adding layers of joy to even the smallest detours. For a child playing the game, finding a nugget or pearl is a thrilling moment, a glimpse of fortune hidden in the landscape. Value items also reflect the cultures of different regions. In Sinnoh, items like the big mushroom are connected to move tutors, showing that commerce and tradition intertwine. In Alola, pearls and other ocean treasures feel like part of the region's culture, tying directly to the importance of the sea. Even in Galar, items like comet shards suggest a fascination with astronomy, linking treasure to the stars above. These subtle connections enrich the lore of each region, making value items feel like more than simple tools for money. Another fascinating detail is how these items connect to wild Pokémon. The fact that Paris often carries mushrooms, or that Shelter may hold pearls, suggests that Pokémon themselves are part of the economy. This blurs the line between creatures and commodities, raising questions about how humans interact with the natural world. Do they harvest these treasures respectfully, or is there a more troubling implication? The games do not provide answers, but the ambiguity adds depth. Ultimately, value items serve as reminders that wealth exists in many forms. They may not heal wounds, evolve companions, or unlock mysteries, but they ground the Pokemon world in reality. Just as in our own world, treasures are found in the earth, the ocean, and even the stars. Nuggets, pearls, mushrooms, and stardust all remind us that beauty and value are often intertwined, and that discovery itself can be rewarding. Even the smallest find in a cave can feel like uncovering a piece of history, a treasure that links the ordinary to the extraordinary. Every region in the Pokemon world has its own identity, and sometimes this uniqueness is reflected not in the creatures themselves, but in the items tied specifically to that land. These regional items add depth to the lore, reminding us that the world is vast and diverse, with cultures that shape their tools in ways that feel distinct from one another. By exploring them, players gain not just new mechanics, but a sense of place, learning that every region carries traditions and technologies unlike any other. In Johto, apricorns stand out as one of the most memorable region-specific features. These simple fruits could be collected and turned into specialized Pokeballs by craftsmen like Kurt. Each apricorn type produced a unique ball with properties tied to its color and design. For players, this was a moment when items felt handcrafted, tied to culture and tradition rather than mass production. The Fast Ball, Heavy Ball, and Love Ball all originated from apricorns, making them deeply connected to Johto's identity. They represented a slower, more personal form of training, one where a trainer's tools were made from the land itself. In Alola, Z crystals served as both items and symbols of cultural significance. Each crystal corresponded to a Pokémon type or even to a specific creature, and they were used to perform Z moves, powerful techniques that showcase the bond between trainer and Pokémon. Unlike other battle tools, Z crystals were tied directly to the traditions of the Island Challenge. They felt less like artificial objects and more like sacred heirlooms, passed down through rituals that celebrated unity. Holding a Z crystal was not simply about unlocking power, but about honoring the customs of the region. In Galar, the Dynamax band became the defining regional item. Given to trainers during the gym challenge, it allowed Pokémon to grow to massive sizes for a limited time. This item was tied directly to the region's culture of spectacle, where Dynamax battles were held in stadiums filled with cheering crowds. The band itself carried the power of wishing stars, stones said to fall from the skies. By channeling this energy, trainers could temporarily transform their companions into giants. The Dynamax band served not only as a tool for battle, but also as a cultural marker, representing Galar's unique blend of tradition and showmanship. Paldea introduced the Terastalize Orb, another regional artifact tied to transformation. When charged with energy, it allowed Pokémon to crystallize and take on new typings. This item was deeply tied to the natural crystals found throughout the land, reflecting the region's geological richness. More than just a battle mechanic, the Terastalize Orb felt like a symbol of change and adaptation, capturing the idea that even within familiar creatures, hidden potential waits to be revealed. Its shimmering effects and unique designs for each Pokémon reminded players that items can be both beautiful and powerful, merging artistry with strategy. Other regional items may not have carried such dramatic mechanics, but they still enriched their worlds. The Rage Candy Bar from Johto, the Lava Cookie from Hoenn, and the Old Gâteau from Sinnoh were all status-healing items disguised as local treats. While functionally similar to full heals, their names and cultural ties gave them charm. Each one reflected the food and traditions of its region, making them feel like souvenirs that connected players to the daily lives of the people who lived there. They reminded players that items are not only tools of battle, but also reflections of local flavor. Kalos offered another unique twist with Megastones, which were scattered throughout the region. While technically held items, they were tied specifically to Kalos's culture of beauty and connection. Each Megastone was designed for a particular species, suggesting that they were not simply natural objects, but artifacts of great significance. Finding them often required searching under moonlight or in specific areas, reinforcing their mystique. The fact that they worked only within Kalos at first emphasized the idea that they were regional treasures, bound to the land's unique energy. Regional fossils also serve as items that tie directly to the land's identity. Hoen's root and claw fossils, Sinnoh's skull and armor fossils, and Galler's bizarre mismatched fossils all reflect the environments in which they were found. They are reminders that each region has its own prehistory, its own stories of life and extinction, captured in stone. Collecting and reviving them connects trainers not just to Pokémon, but to the geological and cultural history of the land itself. Even small items like the shoal salt and shoal shell of Hoenn or the tiny mushroom of Kanto add regional flavor. These objects might not change the course of battles, but they root the player in a specific environment. They remind us that the Pokémon world is full of diversity, not just in species, but in landscapes, economies, and traditions. Items like these deepen immersion, creating the sense that every region has its own treasures waiting to be discovered. When viewed as a whole, regional items show how closely tied the Pokémon universe is to culture and geography. They are not interchangeable tools, but artifacts shaped by tradition, environment, and history. From apricorns crafted into balls, to Z crystals infused with ritual, to orbs and bands channeling the energy of stars and crystals, these items are proof that each region's identity shines not only through its creatures, but through the objects it cherishes. They enrich the journey by reminding trainers that the world is wide, diverse, and filled with stories only certain lands can tell. Some items in the Pokémon world are not remembered for what they do, but for the mysteries that surround them. These are the objects that were hidden in the game code, cut from release, or given out so rarely that many players never even saw them. Their existence blurs the line between the game and its secrets, leaving behind traces of what could have been. These items remind us that not every part of the Pokémon world is meant to be fully explained, and sometimes the greatest fascination comes from the unknown. One of the earliest and most famous examples is the so-called GS Ball from the second generation. In the Japanese versions of Crystal, players could access an event where this golden and silver ball unlocked an encounter with Celebi in the Ilex forest. Outside of that region, the item was never officially released, and it became a legend in its own right. For years, players speculated about the GS Ball, with rumors spreading on playgrounds and online forums about how to obtain it. Its role in the anime only fueled the mystery, as it was depicted as a strange Pokeball with unexplained powers. The GS Ball represents one of the most memorable cut items in history, not for what it did, but for how it left fans dreaming about what could have been. Another strange item is the lock capsule, which appeared in the data of Heart Gold and Soul Silver, but was never distributed widely. Its intended use was to transfer a TM into the next generation of games, but for many players, it existed only as a curiosity discovered by data miners. To find an unused item hidden in the code created a sense of wonder. If this was here, what else might be waiting to be uncovered? The lock capsule became a symbol of unfinished ideas, a reminder that the Pokémon series has always had secrets beneath its surface. The old sea map is another example of a mysterious item. While it was released in Japan, most players across the world never had access to it. This map unlocked the chance to visit Faraway Island, where Deoxys awaited. The idea of a simple map unlocking a hidden location tied to a mythical Pokémon sparked endless curiosity. For players who never saw it, the old sea map existed more as a rumor than reality, a treasure they heard about but could never hold. It became one of the most sought after items, a piece of digital history tied to exclusivity and longing. Some items were tied to features that never came to fruition. The Safari Ball, for example, was coded into games where no Safari Zone existed, suggesting that plans for such areas may have been abandoned. Similarly, certain key items have been discovered in code with no known use, raising questions about whether they were experiments or remnants of cut content. These unused items feed the imagination, letting fans speculate about paths the games might have taken. There are also items that carry a more unsettling kind of mystery. The strange souvenir, introduced in Kalos, hinted at the guardian deities of Alola before that region was even announced. Its design made players wonder why such an object appeared in a region where it seemed to have no connection. Was it a deliberate teaser or a relic of a storyline that was never finished? The fact that it served no purpose except to be sold or admired only deepened the intrigue. It lingered in bags as a constant question, a silent reminder that some mysteries are meant to be carried rather than solved. Even seemingly ordinary items sometimes take on mysterious tones. The Everstone, for instance, prevents evolution, but players often wondered why such a rock exists. Was it meant as a natural counterbalance to evolutionary stones, or was it tied to a deeper lore about Pokémon who resisted change? Items like these are never fully explained, and their ambiguity makes them fascinating. They may serve simple functions in battle or breeding, but they also hint at hidden stories that remain untold. Another category of mysterious items involves those that were event exclusive and nearly impossible to obtain legitimately. The Azure Flute was never released through official means in most regions. Its presence in the game data teased players with the idea that the creator Pokémon could be encountered in a special way. But for most, that door remained closed. The Azure Flute has since become emblematic of missed opportunities, an item that exists more as myth than reality. These kinds of items highlight the way mystery itself can be powerful. Even though players may never have used the GS Ball, held the lock capsule, or played the Azure Flute, the stories surrounding them enriched the experience of the games. They gave fans something to talk about, to dream about, and to wonder about. In a series that thrives on discovery, these hidden and unused items gave the sense that there was always more to uncover, even if it was locked away in the code. Ultimately, the most mysterious items in Pokémon are less about utility and more about imagination. They represent the unseen, the forgotten, and the deliberately hidden. They remind us that the Pokémon world is larger than what fits on the screen, stretching into the community, the developers' choices, and the endless curiosity of fans. To hold one of these items, whether in game or in rumor, is to hold a piece of history not polished or explained, but mysterious and alive. Items in the Pokémon world are more than just tools. They are stories, traditions, and fragments of history. From simple berries to mythical relics, each one adds depth to the journey, reminding us that even the smallest details matter. As you rest, let these quiet stories of items guide you towards sleep, carrying the sense of discovery gently into dreams.